Welcome to People in Profit, where we look at how business shapes our world. I'm Stephen Carroll. Coming up, after coming close to economic collapse 3 years ago, Ukraine's economy has turned a corner. We'll be speaking to the country's finance minister about the progress made and the challenges ahead. A milestone for Iran's oil industry, but will the deal with energy giant Total encourage other investors to move in? And counting bicycles in Beijing, have China's bike-sharing schemes hit a speed bump? First up, though, it's been 3 years since the conflict in eastern Ukraine pushed the country close to economic collapse. The currency lost 70% of its value against the dollar, inflation spiked at more than 60%, and the budget deficit ballooned. Thanks to a major debt restructuring deal and an IMF bailout, things are looking up now for Ukraine's economy, as Martin Pollard reports.
The good news for Ukraine is that the worst could be over. The economy is growing again. In 2016, GDP growth was at 2.3%. This was helped by an upsurge in exports from some sectors, especially agriculture. Other good news includes lower unemployment and inflation. That's a relief for Kiev after it skyrocketed in 2014 and 2015. Elsewhere, the IMF agreed to release $1 billion in aid for Ukraine this year. This means the financial body has handed over around half of a $17.5 billion aid package. In return, the IMF wants to see reforms that will improve productivity and attract investment. While the near-term outlook is positive, it said decisive implementation of structural reforms remains critical to achieve stronger and sustainable growth that Ukraine needs over the medium term. These aid packages are vital to relieve the country's depleted state finances. These have been hit hard by the effects of an ongoing conflict with pro-Russian separatists in the east of the country, which began in 2014. The World Bank says Ukraine is set for modest growth over the next 2 years. But this is vulnerable to risk factors such as trade blockades in the east of the country and a downturn in the global economy.
Well, I'm joined now from London by Ukraine's Finance Minister Oleksandr Danylyuk. Minister, thank you very much for being with us. First of all, things are looking up for Ukraine's economy. What sort of state are the public finances in now?
We stabilized the financial system. It wasn't easy, given the quite difficult starting point in 2014, where we, as a result of regression, we lost almost 25% of our industrial production capacity. The GDP dropped to almost 20%. The inflation skyrocketed. So now it is a result of very decisive actions. We returned to the economic growth. We achieved 2% last year, and we expect to grow 3% in the years to come. Inflation was reduced from 50% to 9% this year. Budget deficit at 3%. So actually, we're doing some decisive steps to stabilize the financial system. And also implementing some reforms, sometimes painful, but the reforms that bring the results. Reforms that return us to economic growth, and the reforms that improve our investment attractiveness, both for internal and external investors.
One of those reforms that's been particularly difficult is reforming the pension system. It's a huge section of your public spending. Where are you now with those reforms?
Well, actually, at the moment, the #1 priority is the pension reform, as you mentioned, but there were some other quite painful reforms, cleaning up the banking system, for example, as a result of which 89 banks were taking off the market. The reforms of gas sector, increasing the tariff to the market level, also wasn't extremely easy to do. Returning back to the pension reform, yes, we expect to vote it by the end of summer parliamentary session, which is mid of July. There is some possibility that it will have to be delayed till September, when the parliament will come back from their summer recess.
The IMF, of course, very keen to see those sort of reforms implemented. Are you concerned that delays to that pension reform or other major economic reforms could delay the next payment from the IMF?
Well, I can tell you that who is concerned is the population, because they understand that the pension reform, the pension system is not stable, right? And if people want to get a certainty about the future pension, those who are already pensioners and those who will become pensioners in 5 years, in 10 years, doesn't matter, right? They want to believe in their future, they need to have a trust. And they understand that we need to have this pension reform. And it's obligation of the government to do that.
You mentioned the efforts being made to clean up the banking system. You had to nationalise the country's biggest retail lender, Privet Bank, recently at a cost of more than $5 billion to the taxpayer. Is that bank safe now? Is it going to need more public money?
The bank went through two injections of capitals. First, at the time of nationalization, and just recently, we put additional capital, not because it's needed, because of bank, not performing, not doing their business properly, problem with business model, but because the latest audit identified some additional related party lending or bad debts related to the previous owners and the management that had to be covered by the shareholder, and the state as a shareholder did it. So yes, we did these two injections. I don't expect any more.
You mentioned the former owners there, some of them among some of the richest people in Ukraine. They missed a deadline to restructure a package of loans. Is your government going to be able to get back that extra money that it's had to put in as a result?
Yes, they missed the deadline that they set for themselves, pretty much. And we as a government will be looking for the ways to recoup the money we had to put in the bank to save it.
And how are you planning to do that?
Well, through legal actions. There was the bank was brought to bankruptcy, and there is a legislation in Ukraine that regulates it. And the management and the former shareholder, they're liable for that.
OK, Oleksandr Danylyuk, Ukraine's finance minister, thank you very much for speaking to us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Now next to a landmark deal for Iran's oil and gas industry. The French energy giant Total signed a major agreement with Tehran, the first Western company to do so since sanctions were lifted. The $4.8 billion deal with Chinese and Iranian partners will develop the world's largest gas field, South Pars, off the coast of Iran. Although the United States has threatened to abandon the international nuclear deal and reinstate sweeping sanctions, the Total contract could mark a turning point for the country as it tries to attract more foreign investors.
What I hope is that this agreement between a big European French company and Iran is going to allow and inspire other companies to come to Iran, because I think economic development is also a way to bring peace. Our companies are there to build bridges, not walls.
So just what companies have put down roots in Iran and what's holding others back? Kate Moody's been taking a look. Kate.
Stephen, the United Nations tracked just under $3.4 billion worth of foreign direct investment in Iran in 2016. That means companies that are based in other countries establishing business operations there. It's a nearly two-thirds increase from the previous year, but still short of pre-sanction levels. Much of the investment is in energy, transport and infrastructure, although tourism and related services are also seeing a boost. So far, Total is the first European oil giant to truly tap into Iran's vast energy resources. Royal Dutch Shell and Italy's Eni have only signed provisional deals with Tehran. But the country is home to the world's second largest gas reserves and fourth largest oil reserves, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, and Tehran wants to develop that sector to boost its own economy. In the air and on the roads, Iran's aging transport systems and infrastructure were a top target for investors. The European Airbus and American Boeing have sold over 300 jets to carriers like Iran Air and Azman. French automakers PSA and Renault were quick to relaunch manufacturing in the Islamic Republic, while Volkswagen will import and sell its cars there. Italy's state railway company is now developing a new high-speed train line. Now, some of those deals still hang in limbo because of the complex rules of doing business in Iran. Some international banking restrictions are still in place, making it difficult to move money in and out of the country. The Trump administration has also drawn a hard line on Tehran, threatening to abandon the nuclear deal or impose more sanctions. That's a risk hanging over all pending deals in Iran, which has to be weighed against the potential rewards. Stephen?
Kate, thank you very much for that. Now, bike sharing has become a true phenomenon in China, with over 50 million users signing up in just a few months. There are more than a dozen operators in the market, but the recent failure of one firm has sent a shockwave through the industry, sparking concern about its future. Our correspondent in Beijing sent us this report.
Since late last year, it's become nearly impossible to miss them. These colorful cycles are hugely popular, and there are 11 companies in the Beijing market alone. Renting one is a cinch. Scan the QR code below the seat and the bike unlocks. Riding costs just a few cents a half hour.
It's good for the environment, it reduces the pollution, and I lose weight.
I use it quite often every day. I commute with it both morning and evening.
It's very convenient, but there are too many now. They're everywhere, and it looks very messy on the streets.
The two leading brands alone, Mobike and Ofo, have distributed more than 11 million bicycles in China's biggest cities. But amidst this booming industry, one enterprise has just gone bankrupt. The red bicycles of a company called Wukong weren't profitable enough and have been pulled out. The move raises concerns about the health of the industry.
The quick success that the market leaders, being OFO and Mobike, have achieved have attracted a lot of copycats. It's not a difficult business to get into. It doesn't require a great deal of capital, and most of those businesses will fail.
The surviving actors in this highly competitive market have bright prospects. Biking may once again become the most popular means of transportation in China's cities, now suffocating with traffic and pollution.
And that's it from us for this week. If you've any thoughts on the stories we've been covering, you can get in touch on Facebook at France 24 Business, or you can tweet me at NewStephen. Until next time, thanks for watching.
Tech 24, presented by Julia Seeger and Dhananjay Kaldilkar.
Self-reliant in energy, no greenhouse gas emissions. Meet the Energy Observer. This futuristic boat will travel the oceans for 6 years, seeking innovative environmental solutions. Before it sets off, Energy Observer will be calling in at Paris, an opportunity to imagine the cities of the future. Follow the start of this odyssey with Tech 24.
Tech 24, en France 24 and France24.com.